Welcome back to the podcast, Chloe. Yay. And you've got little Ruben there, who's 10 weeks old with you now. And I have yet to hear the story of how Ruben came into the world, although I have a few inklings. So today I would love for you to share with us about your journey to birthing Ruben and the decisions, I guess, that you made around your pregnancy and birth planning and postpartum planning. So we've got lots to get through because I know it's a big story. And so, yeah, take it away.
It's funny, I was thinking about where do I start with this story? And I run women's circles, and I always say to the women in circle, don't overthink your share. Like, just listen to the other women, and when it gets to your turn, just speak and see what comes out. And so that's what I decided to do. Rather than make notes, I'm just going to see what part of the story needs to be shared. Ruben is just falling asleep, so he might be a bit grisly. So we'll just see. Hey, you're gonna have a sleep. I think that planning this pregnancy and birth happened almost as soon as Olivia was born. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to try and conceive, and that was when the planning started. It really began with her birth experience and the healing from that birth. So her birth and her pregnancy and her everything was basically the polar opposite of what I ended up doing this time round. But that wasn't an overnight decision. So after Olivia's birth, I decided that I wanted to birth at home the next time I had a baby. So I made the decision to try and find a home birth midwife before we even were thinking about conceiving. I didn't want to be pregnant and then be on this mad search to find what I wanted or needed in terms of support. And I remember I looked on the Find My Midwife website, and there was one midwife in Otago who said that she did home births, and she was based in Dunedin, which is nearly 2 hours away from where we live. And I know that a lot of the home birth midwives stopped working a few years ago. And so, there was this one midwife, and I phoned her up and I said, I'm not pregnant, but if I were to be pregnant, would you consider attending a birth where I live in Wedderburn in central Otago? And she said, well, I've never had anyone phone me before who wasn't pregnant yet. This is a first. And she said it would depend on the time of year that you were looking to give birth, because if it was in the summer holidays, I couldn't really commit to it because of my kids, but any other time I could. And I sort of gave a very brief synopsis of what happened the first time round and why I was being so proactive. And she said, in theory I would. But at the moment I'm doing like locum in Dunedin Hospital, and my little alarm bells just went, oh no. And she was really lovely to talk to, and but just that I didn't want someone who knew that hospital protocol, who for them that was normal and safe and okay. I didn't want to be bringing that into my home. And so I sort of felt a little bit deflated. And then I was thinking, oh, maybe I could get a doula and maybe not call the midwife, or call the midwife later, or have them both there, and maybe like the doula would be able to speak for me. Doulas, there's not many of them in Otago either. So there's one that I know of in Dunedin, she wouldn't come this far. And then there's a lady in Wanaka, which is about 2 hours in the other direction. And she had a similar sort of story. Yes, I can do it, but not in the summer holidays because of my kids. And then I said to her, you know, as the weeks went on, I was thinking, well, if I'm thinking about not calling the midwife at all, maybe I don't even want the midwife there. You know, maybe I just want the doula. I just want someone there to support us. And I said to the doula, would you consider attending a birth without a midwife present? And she said, I don't think I would feel comfortable doing that. Oh, do I want a doula there who doesn't feel 100% safe and comfortable with birth? Do I want a midwife there who works in a hospital? And it really, you know, it gave me a lot to think about. And this was, you know, we're still months before even talking about conceiving. And I just realized that if I couldn't have exactly who I wanted there, I would rather have no one. And I sat with that. How does that feel? Oh, it actually feels fine. You know, I feel okay with that idea. And I remember saying to my partner, Liam, our daughter had just turned 1. And in our initial plan of parenthood, oh, yeah, we'll conceive our next baby when the first one turns 1, and that'll be a really nice age gap and blah, blah, blah. And I realized then that I was so not ready to go through that whole process again. But I said to him, I think I've decided that the next time we have a baby, I don't want anyone there. I don't want a midwife in the pregnancy. I don't want anyone at the birth. And he was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And I said, that's what I'm thinking. And we didn't really talk any more about it because we still were not at that active conception stage. So I was just sharing my thoughts so that he had time for them to land. And it wasn't until our daughter turned 2 that I thought, you know what, I think I could do this again. I feel like my body is replenished. She had just stopped breastfeeding just before she turned 2. And, you know, I had really wanted to tandem breastfeed, but my body had struggled so much with just meeting her needs that I had decided that she needed to stop breastfeeding before I could, consider conceiving. So she had stopped breastfeeding. She didn't need my body so much. I was feeling good. And I guess in my mind, I was feeling good too. Like the idea of having to give birth again wasn't this awful, traumatic horror show that it had been for most of the time since Olivia's birth. And we conceived straight away with Olivia, and I naively thought that that would happen again, and it didn't. And that was a really big lesson, I think, for that whole pregnancy and birth experience. Was, yes, you can plan, but also some of it is out of your hands, and you need to be okay with that. You need to be at peace with the idea that you can't control everything. And so we were sort of actively, consciously calling in a baby for quite a few months. And then we had this trip to the UK, which was kind of bang in the middle of this conception process. And, you know, I didn't want to be early pregnancy in the UK in case I felt really sick, and I didn't want to be really pregnant in the UK. And it was like I was overthinking it so much. And I remember feeling sure that we'd conceived on a couple of occasions, but the kind of month before we went to the UK, and then my bleed started like the day before we flew to the UK. And I remember feeling so devastated because in my mind, I'd wanted to be pregnant on my homeland and be able to share that with family and friends. And I mean, aside from the fact that no one wants to be bleeding on a 24-hour flight with a toddler, there was this kind of emotional side of it too. But I really just tried to enjoy, having my cycle, having this bleed. Yes, it's another opportunity to connect with my body and really listen in to what she's telling me. And that had been a huge process really since my cycle had returned after Olivia's birth. I had really made a conscious effort to tune into my cycle and trust my body and notice all these sensations, because for me it felt like a mini opportunity to practice pregnancy and practice postpartum and practice birth each month. Anyway, we went to the UK, and after we got back from the UK, I kind of realized why I hadn't been able to conceive beforehand or while we were there. And the UK trip was this real letting go of relationships and friendships and I don't want to say hopes and dreams, but ideas. It was very final. And I realized in hindsight that wasn't the right environment to be carrying a new life or creating a new life. And so we conceived just after we got home from the UK. And everything that I'd been practicing since Olivia's birth then came into action. So I had decided I didn't want any interventions in this pregnancy. I didn't want to take a pregnancy test. I just wanted to listen to my body, because I knew that every opportunity to listen was practice for the kind of big surrender, the big trust that was coming at the end. I knew that if I wanted to birth on my own, in my power, I had to take every opportunity to practice that. And that was really hard. It wasn't like, oh, I've made this decision and now everything's easy and I'm not going to second guess anything. It was painful. Those early weeks where I was like, oh, am I pregnant? Am I not pregnant? Maybe my cycle's gone all funny because we went overseas and, that travel, and I'd been bleeding a lot while we were away. So I wasn't really sure, even though I was sure. I was sure inside of myself. I knew, and I was creating this self-doubt. And so I said, I want to wait a good extra 4 weeks from when my bleed should have come. And that way, that gives me time for if my cycle was just being a bit funny. And by that point, like, there were all the other signs. My appetite was shifting and my whole digestive system and my mood and my energy levels. And but it felt really weird to not have this physical confirmation, like, yes, I'm pregnant. And so it was a strange process sharing it with people too, because it wasn't, for them, it wasn't definite. And we just sort of shared it with people as and when. My mum was staying with us, so she knew quite early on, because I would say things like, oh, I'm just waiting for my bleed. Oh, I'm feeling really moody because I'm waiting for my bleed, but maybe it's not coming because maybe I'm pregnant. She was there through all of that. yeah, and then I'd made the decision not to have a midwife, you know, not to go to the GP and have blood tests to confirm the pregnancy, and it felt really good. It felt really nice. It felt really peaceful. My life wasn't interrupted by these things I must go and do. It just flowed. I just lived my life. And, you know, I still, probably until my tummy started to grow, I still was like, oh, you know, maybe I'm not pregnant. Like, maybe I'm just making it all up. And maybe my bleed is going to come, or maybe I am pregnant and my bleed is going to come and it's going to end, but I just have to trust, because, you know, what would a test show me that I don't actually know in myself? And, you know, I remember thinking, if I lose the baby, my body knows what to do. A test is only going to confirm what I already know, and it's not going to change the outcome. I think that was really key. Nothing from outside is going to change the outcome of what is happening in my body. And I mean, I was very fortunate to have a close friend going through the same thing. So she was a couple of months ahead of me in her pregnancy, having a hands-off, no intervention pregnancy. And so that was really nice. You know, we were able to sort of share our doubts with each other, or our crazy little mind spirals that were happening. And I knew I wanted to share the pregnancy with my social media, my Instagram followers, because I'd been sharing lots about my menstrual cycle and women's circles and self-trust and cultivating trust and listening to your intuition. So I knew I wanted to share it, but I also knew I needed to be in a place where I was feeling so rock solid with what was happening that any untoward comments weren't going to penetrate. And so, you know, I don't think I shared it till maybe five or 6 months into the pregnancy, when I was really sure that I was pregnant, sure that baby was staying, sure that I was happy with whatever outcome was going to occur. And so I just, you know, I started sharing a few posts and reels about, like, hey, did you know that when you're pregnant, you can just be pregnant and you don't have to go and have all these tests and interventions? And so many women reached out to me and said, oh my goodness, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know those things were optional. And it was kind of mind-blowing, because by that point I was really living that life. And I had to keep thinking back to, like, when I was pregnant with Olivia, I didn't know that. I did all the things and ticked all the boxes because that's what I thought you had to do. So it was really cool to be able to share that with women. And then obviously, as the support came in, so too did the backlash. And I had one reel which I shared towards the end of my pregnancy that got like 1 million views, and it went off. I don't know how the algorithm works, but it seemed to send this to all the people who really didn't want to see it. And the hate in the comments was kind of unbelievable. And I think if I hadn't been so solid in what I was doing, that would have really hurt. But if anything, it made me realize that what I was doing was so necessary, and that sharing it was also really necessary. And that a lot of people still see pregnancy and birth as this really scary, dangerous event that needs controlling. And, you know, that wasn't the case at all. And I should add at this point, you know, I chose not to have any standard medical intervention, any tests or appointments or scans But I knew that if I felt the need, I would. And I don't know what that would have looked like. I don't know what would have had to happen for me to do that, but I knew that that was an option. So it wasn't like I was sitting here going, oh, and if I think that I'm dying or my baby's dying, I'm just going to do nothing. It was like, I'm trusting that if I need to go and see someone, I will.
Chloe, what you described of the lead up to your pregnancy and the practicing, tuning into your cycle and noticing what your body was saying to you and doing and responding to that. That's the practice for what you're describing here, which is I will know there will be messages from my body or my baby, or, there will be some signs that I need to receive outside support if that's the case. And without any of that messaging, I'm able to trust that my body is doing exactly what it's designed to do, because I've been practicing doing just that before I got pregnant. And I just wanted to that link might have been really obvious to a lot of listeners, but just to highlight it, because it can be so frustrating, right? You're trying to conceive, why is it not happening? And then sometimes it all becomes so clear down the track. I had these lessons to learn. I didn't conceive before I went to the UK because it was, only in hindsight I can say it was not the right time to be carrying a new life. I think they're beautiful examples of the wisdom of our bodies and of learning to trust that wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a deep dive for me, this menstrual cycle learning. I went on a huge deep dive about kind of the oppression of women since the witch trials in the UK and Europe, and even before that. So there was a lot of me realizing that we have just been conditioned to not trust. Like, women aren't trustworthy, their bodies aren't trustworthy, they need to be controlled. And it was, I was taking that back. And we don't go and have an ultrasound every month to see if we've ovulated or to see when we're going to start bleeding and how our uterine lining is looking. Like, we don't. And so why did I need to do it now? So I felt deeply intuitive, I suppose. I knew that the practice I'd done leading up to this pregnancy would be the starting point for the practice that the pregnancy would offer. The pregnancy offers these opportunities to tune in and trust. And every time I would say to myself, this is a lesson for the big one. If I've got to get through the birth, I've got to take these practice opportunities. And I had this friend who was a few weeks ahead of me, but I also had other women in my life who had chosen to have kind of hands-off pregnancies. I was surrounded by women who had deep trust in themselves and in me, and that made such a difference. I knew I could do it, but to also have other women in my corner was really cool. And it meant that when these comments, rolled in on social media, I knew that I was right for me. I was doing what was right for me. And I think maybe this is a good place to add that my partner was completely not on board with with this whole idea. I think the hands-off pregnancy, that didn't faze him at all. You know, he never said, oh, do you think you should get a scan, or like, should we do this test? But the notion of giving birth at home without someone there who knows birth was really scary for him. And I can completely understand that, because his only other experience of birth was our daughter's birth, which was hugely traumatic, very hands-on. And he hadn't spent the last 3 years healing from that, learning about physiological birth, learning about women's bodies, gaining this intuition. And so he really, really, really struggled with that. And it made our whole relationship really tense through quite a lot of my pregnancy, because I didn't want to compromise. Not compromise. I didn't want to have to do something I didn't want to do to make him feel comfortable. And I'd heard, you know, podcasts and stories of women who, you know, got a midwife to make their husband feel okay and ended up in hospital having a C-section, or, you know, whatever. And I just thought, I don't want to be in that situation where I, A, am not enjoying the process because it's not what I wanted, but B, if something happens, I don't want to be blaming you forever. And so that kind of hung over our heads for a lot of the pregnancy. And I was really in this dual life, because on one side I was really loving just being pregnant and trusting my body and feeling amazing. And then on the other side of life, he was really hurting and struggling, and we just couldn't seem to find a way through that. And
was it ever an option for him to not be present at the birth?
Yeah, so we went round in circles a little bit, and in the end, that was what came up. You know, I said, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to be there. I don't want you to feel forced into something that you never agreed to, because we didn't sit down before we conceived and say, okay, this is exactly what it's going to look like. Do you agree? Do you not? And so, I kind of came to this place where I realized I couldn't force him. I had hoped that he would do some learning and change his mind, but I couldn't force him to do that. And I said, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to be there. And he was like, but who's going to be there if I'm not there? I said, I can give birth by myself. Like, I don't need you there. I want you there, but I don't need anyone there. And our sort of final compromise was, yes, that if it came to it and he didn't feel comfortable, he would not be there. But he also asked if a friend of mine could come to the birth. Abby, who has been on your podcast. And he said he wanted support. He wanted someone else to be there so that it wasn't all on him. And Olivia's labor was really long, like 40 hours or something, start to finish. And he was there for the whole thing. And, he was exhausted and he was hungry and he probably needed to go to the toilet. And I think a lot of that was playing on his mind, as well as if something goes wrong, I'm responsible and I have to be the one to make the call. He was thinking logistics, like, I don't know if I can go through that again. And so he said, would you consider having Abby here? I was like, yeah, well, she's not a hospital midwife. She's just a friend, and she has given birth at home and we've talked a lot about birth and I trust her, and she knows Olivia really well. So if she has to support Olivia, you know, that would work. And so that was kind of where we landed. He was really afraid that I would resent him if he didn't come to the birth. And I said, I won't resent you if you don't come, if you show me that you're making an effort to see things from my perspective. But if you decide right now in this moment, without doing any more thinking or listening or learning, that you're not coming, then I probably am going to be a bit pissed. And I think that you will regret it. I said, this is your baby, and I think you will regret not being there. And we kind of left it at that. There was no point having the same conversation again. And I felt really at peace with the idea of potentially giving birth on my own, which was such a surprise to me, because during Olivia's birth, I had relied on Liam so much. You know, every contraction, I wanted him there. I wanted physical contact with him to help me through. And this time I just realized no one can help me. No one can take the pain away if there's pain, or change the outcome, not in a way I consent to anyway. You know, it's on me. I have got to do this, and I will, you know, I will. My body can do it. Yeah, so I was feeling really, really fine with that whole idea. And so, unless you've got anything to ask, maybe I'll get to the birth story. Finally, blah, blah, blah.
No, that sounds great. I was interested to know how Abby felt about like I don't know how things who ended up being at your birth or whatever, but whether you did ask Abby and how she felt about being present at
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because she had asked me to attend her birth, her home birth. And in the end, I think because she had two midwives present, because it was a home birth, she just didn't feel, and she was in her power. She was so in her power. She didn't end up calling me. And I said, that's brilliant. You know, of course, I'd love to be there. I'd love to witness your birth. But if you don't call me, that's the best, you know, that's the best outcome.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah, I asked her, and she was so excited. It's such a privilege to be invited to someone's birth. It is such a privilege. And she really felt that. And, you know, she said right at the start, if you end up not calling me, that's fine, you know. Yeah, and I said it might be, we've got a little cottage next to our house, which we Airbnb. And I said it might be that we call you and you go in there, and we end up not calling you into the house. You know, you might be here just in case, and, you know, not even come in. Yeah, and she was cool with that. The only thing was that where I thought baby might be born, she was actually going to be away for a few weeks. So she said, you know, if the baby comes before this date, we're good, and then I'm away. And so I actually ended up asking another friend who had free birthed, you know, would you consider coming to my birth if Abby can't make it, or, you know, if we need both of you there, if you need support for each other, if it's a long labor. And she said yes. So I was covered for this whole range of weeks, because actually I didn't know when baby was going to come. I mean, no one knows. And when I asked Abby, I did end up working out a rough birth date based on how long I'd been pregnant with Olivia for, because that was my only real, I guess, measurement, was how long my body did it last time and my baby did it. Maybe it'll be the same. And I thought, you know, when you're asking someone else into the space, they do need to have a vague idea of when you might call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd been, you know, I didn't have a due date. When people asked when I was due, I was like, our baby will come when they're ready.
Yeah.
You know, maybe in the autumn sometime. By May, I think we'll have a baby. And people found that really hard to get their heads around.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had organized a mother's blessing for myself this time round. Had a baby shower first time. And in hindsight, I realized that having that baby shower was because I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be seen and supported and held. And I didn't know how. I didn't know how that. I didn't know what that looked like. And all I'd heard of was a baby shower. So I had this baby shower, and I mean, it was beautiful, like really, really lovely, but it just didn't quite hit the spot. And in all my learning since, I'd come across the idea of mother blessings, and I thought, yes, that is what I want. I want to be worshipped. You know how it sounds a bit arrogant because that's not what our culture is used to, but like, I want women around me who are going to say, you're amazing, you know, you've been amazing and you're going to be amazing, and this is what life is all about.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to run it myself. I knew that I could, and I had run the mother's blessing for my friend who was a few weeks ahead of me, but I wanted to really be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with Toya Hicks, and she said that she would run it for me. So she came, and we had this incredible, I'm sitting here in my living room, which is where we had it, and I can still just feel it. And I wish that every woman would get to feel this. Yeah, she came. It was a Sunday at the start of March, and I'd planned it to be kind of a few weeks before I thought that baby would come. And it was also the day before my birthday. And I thought, what better way to celebrate my birthday than to have this mother's blessing with all these women that I love. And yeah, we sat here in a circle and shared stories, and, you know, all the women went round and said what they admired about me, which was really hard. It's hard to hear nice things about yourself, but it was just perfect at the end of my pregnancy to be hearing all these reassuring words. And I think there were, I don't know, 8 or 9 women there that day. Half of them had had free births. You know, there were a couple of home births. These were women who really just got it, like understood what this was all about. Yeah, so we had this beautiful day on the Sunday, and then at the end of the day, one of the women said, okay, we've celebrated you now, Chloe, baby, you can come out. I was like, no, I've still got weeks. Like, I'm feeling like there's weeks to go. And the next day, the Monday, I woke up on my birthday and my tummy had just dropped overnight. And I remember thinking, well, I'm at the end of my pregnancy. You know, I'm getting towards the end of my pregnancy. It doesn't mean anything. And my friend who had had her baby by that point, her tummy had dropped like a month before her baby ended up being born, and she got all excited and then was like, oh, baby's still not here, baby's still not here. So I really just let it go. Yeah, had my birthday day, and then the next day was the Tuesday, and I took Olivia to play center in the morning. And it was just me and one other mama who had been at my mother's blessing. So we ended up just sitting there and talking about birth, and then on the way home, we stopped in at the farm because they were shearing, and Olivia loves to see the sheep being shorn. So she was like in the wool shed watching all the sheep, and I was thinking, oh, I feel a bit crampy. It was like a really dull period cramp type feeling, really down low. But I'd had that a few weeks before. So again, I just thought, I'm getting towards the end of my pregnancy. This is nothing, nothing to really think about. Went home, put Olivia down for a nap. And instead of having a nap, which I'd been doing a lot at the end of my pregnancy, I was just really like, oh, I just need to sort things. I'm just going to put some clean sheets on the spare bed, and I'm just going to sort through some baby clothes, and I'm just going to make sure all my herbs have got labels on so that when I, go into labor, whoever comes into the house knows what's what. And it still didn't cross my mind that anything was happening. I was just like, oh, at the end of my pregnancy, these are all normal things to do. And then about 5 o'clock, I started to get the crampy feeling again. And anyone else with a toddler will know that the evenings are, well, maybe the hardest part of the day. And Olivia was just really testing me. And I sent Liam a text and I said, are you nearly home? Because I'm just struggling a bit. And he got home about 5 minutes later. I said, I just don't feel that good. And Olivia's driving me mad. Can you take over? And I'm just going to go to our room for a bit. I said, I don't think it's anything, but I'm just, not feeling present. And then at about 5:15, I realized that I didn't have Abby's phone number. We only ever messaged on Messenger. And I thought, when I go into labor, I'm really going to need her phone number. So I sent her a message and said, can I have your phone number, please? Still didn't think that I was in labor. I was just like, when I get to that point. By 5:45, so like half an hour later, Liam said, have you messaged Abby? I think you should message Abby. I think that you should tell her what's going on. And I just sent her a text and said, can you keep your phone on you tonight, please? And she was like, oh, is something happening? I said, oh, I don't think so. I don't know, maybe, but just keep your phone on you. And I think I was still, in a bit of denial, but probably by about 6 o'clock, I thought, I really hope this is it, because I don't want to have to do this again. If this is just a practice, this is quite hard.
What was happening for you physically, Chloe?
By that point, it had shifted from just a dull, crampy feeling to very, definite contractions, like separate moments of intensity. It wasn't painful, it was just intense. And it was a very clear feeling, down inside my lower abdomen, of this pulling apart. I could feel my body pulling apart, which I definitely don't remember from the first time round. And so I said to Liam, you just look after Olivia, do dinner, I'll be in our bedroom. I'm fine, but I just need some space. And so I was in our room, I had the lights off, and I remember thinking, this could go on for a really long time. You have got to rest. You need to conserve your energy. And so I was lying in bed, and then when I'd feel a contraction coming on, I would jump out of bed and try and get comfortable. And I was holding on to the end of the bed, and I just made this really conscious decision to try and enjoy it, rather than being like, oh, this is so hard. I was like, this is great. My body is doing what it needs to do. And I was singing to myself and saying all these affirmations, and then the contraction would, fade away, and I'd get back into bed. And Liam came in a couple of times just to see how I was, and I was like, I'm good. I'm so good. I'm having a really good time. This is really fun. So I stayed in our room, and I said to him, you know, when you go to bed, because he sleeps in with Olivia, I said, when you go to bed, just make sure that you've lit the fire and that it's nice and hot, and that you've put the cat bed outside and shut the cat door, because I just thought that is the last thing I want, is this cat like up in my face when I'm trying to move through contractions. So at about 9 o'clock, he took Olivia to bed, and so we sort of swapped. He went into their bedroom, I came out to the living room, and yeah, he'd left it. It was dark and it was hot and the fire was on and the cat was gone. And I had it in my mind that I really wanted to set up like a birth altar. And I had these affirmation cards that the women had painted at my mother's blessing, and I had these special candles, and my mum had sent a photo of like her and me when I was a baby. And I was deeply in contractions by this point, but I just really wanted my birth altar because it was part of my vision. And so I was setting up candles and pinning up affirmation cards, and then I'd have to stop and have another contraction, and then I'd carry on and do a bit more and stop. And I don't know how many contractions I had, Carla, before I got this bloody birth altar all set up and all the candles lit. And then it was too bright and I had to blow all the candles out. I was like, I can't look at it, it's too bright, I just don't need that in my life right now. And yeah, so I was, you know, in this room where I'd had my mother's blessing, where these women had shared their stories and told me how amazing I was just 2 days before. Like, all the energy was still here in this space. And so yeah, I labored out here. Oh, and Liam had said when he went to bed, just wake me up when you need me. I was like, great, okay, I'm great, like I'm really good. And I mean, I couldn't get comfortable. I was on the sofa, on the floor, standing up by the fire, just trying to get comfortable and still having this really strong, opening feeling with every contraction. And so I was like squatting to try and, I don't know, go with that movement, I guess. And I do remember at one point thinking, oh my God, I don't think I can do this, you know, all night and all day. Like, if this is going to go on for hours and hours, I'm really going to struggle. And then, you know, this other bit of my brain was like, well, you can't do anything about it, so just shut up and get on with it, you know? Don't even think about that. What good is that? And I had nothing. I hadn't hired a birth pool. I didn't have a TINS machine or, you know, anything to kind of distract or detract from myself. And I was waiting for all these things to happen that had happened with Olivia's birth. So I had a bucket because I was waiting to vomit, and I was waiting for, you know, the diarrhea that I'd had and for my body to empty out. And I was waiting for my waters to break. And just like none of these things had happened yet. So I guess I thought I still had a really long way to go because, oh, well, I haven't gone through that thing yet. And at one point I went to the bathroom for a wee, and I noticed that my mucus plug had come out, and that hadn't happened. I had never seen that with Olivia's birth. So I sat in the bathroom and I was like, wow, this is like amazing. Look at this. This is so cool. And then I had this little voice go, oh, that means my cervix has only just opened, because otherwise it would have fallen out ages ago. Like, I've been doing all this work and all this pulling apart feeling, and my cervix only just opened. And then the other voice was like, you don't know that, shut up, like what are you talking about? So I just carried on going. And I remember thinking, I really want to get in the shower. I really want to get in the shower, but that's all I've got. Like, that is my only tool. and I need to save it for when I need it.
Can I ask, Chloe,
Yeah.
why you had chosen not to have those other options available to you? Yeah.
Yeah. With Olivia's birth, I hid in the birth pool, I felt, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, be trying to stop things. And I just trusted my body, I think, was the other half of it. I just trusted that, whatever came up, I could cope with. And women didn't have birth pools. They don't have birth pools all over the world, and they haven't had them through all of time. And we had been putting an outdoor bath in, but it never got finished. And I wanted to feel it. I wanted to feel everything, and I didn't want to be trying to make those feelings go away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you weren't wanting to distract yourself from them. You just wanted to be with whatever was coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I knew I had the shower. Like,
Yeah.
that was my one thing that I had. And I had my body. So I do remember at one point, like, digging my fingers into my hips to try and counter this splitting in half feeling. My pelvis was like, oh my gosh. And I thought, well, like, yeah, this is what I've got. It's me.
Mm.
I don't need someone else to do that. I can do that. So I went, where are we at time wise? Yeah, it was about 9 o'clock when I came out to the living room. And yeah, at some point I had no idea of the time, because I'd made a conscious effort to not engage with time. I thought, right, I've got to get in the shower. Like, I need the shower. And I went into the bathroom, turned the shower on so it would heat up, came out here to get something, went back into the bathroom, and had this huge contraction that, instead of this low down pulling apart, it felt like an elevator just dropped, and like the whole inside of my body just pushed down, and my waters broke. I still had undies on at this point, and so the waters like shot out the legs of my undies. It was just a total mess. And I stepped into the shower and was like, whoa, that was so intense. Took my undies off, and then I don't know why, but I just intuitively was like, I'm going to just feel inside my vagina and see if I can feel anything. And I was like, oh my God, there's a baby right there. Oh shit. And so I was standing in the shower, and I was like, Liam, because I really didn't want to wake Olivia up. And I just thought, you can't, they're in the same bed. Like, you can't wake one up and not the other. So I grabbed a towel and like shuffled down to their bedroom, and I was like, Liam, yeah, what is it? I was like, I really need you right now. He was like, okay. I was like, no, right now, like, get out of bed right now, come to the bathroom, shut the doors behind you. I was very in my head, but I'd actually been really present the whole time, which, yeah, I think was another thing that had thrown me in terms of time frame. I was expecting to go off to La La Land, and I don't think I ever really did. So he came into the bathroom like all bleary-eyed, and I said, I'm having a baby now. Like, the baby is coming out now. And he was so shocked, because it was 11:05, so he'd been in bed 2 hours, and these contractions were intense. Like, I think I started off standing, and then I was like, oh, I can't stand through this. Like, I need to be on my hands and knees. And so I'd like have this big contraction. I could feel the baby coming down and going back up, and coming down, going back up. And I was kind of pep talking Liam in between contractions, because we'd never really had our final birth conversation. You know, we thought we still had weeks to go, and we'd never really decided like what was going to happen, who was going to do what, how we would feel. And so I'd say like, oh, you know, the baby's coming down and then going back up, and this is really good because it's giving my body time to stretch and open, you know, like don't panic that it's taking time. And he was great. He was just there. He didn't say anything, he didn't do anything. And then when baby started crowning, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like try and slow things down. I've got my hand on baby's head, like I don't want this to happen too fast. And that was excruciating. That for me, that was painful. And I'd kind of gone into it with this like, I'm not gonna let it be painful, I'm going to enjoy all of it. But that in my body, that crowning felt painful. Bearable, manageable, but definitely not euphoric or orgasmic or pleasurable.
Were you back in the shower? Did you get
I
back?
was. So I was, from when Liam got up, I just stayed in the shower. And you know, when baby was crowning, because my body hadn't done any of this emptying out thing, like there was poo and I was on my hands and knees, and I was like, Liam, can you get rid of the poo, please? You know, and he just did everything. Like he was so present. And I would remember feeling really like, oh, this crowning is so painful. I really want it to be over and done with and get the head out. But I also really don't want to, you know, tear too majorly. I was really at peace with the idea of tearing, and that had been, you know, a bit of a process. I was very, very afraid of it initially after Olivia's birth, because I'd had an episiotomy with her birth and it had been really, really painful and taken a long time to heal. And so I was really afraid of tearing. And then I read something that a woman had shared that was like, maybe our bodies tear because they need to. Like maybe sometimes when we give birth, that part of our body tears and that's what has to happen. And I was like, oh, yeah, I hadn't really thought of it as something that just happens. It had always seemed like a failure or like a thing you were trying to avoid. So, although I was at peace with it, I didn't want anything, you know, too extreme. And eventually, like, baby's head came out, and that was so cool. Like, to be on my hands and knees in the shower and to be able to feel my baby's head with one hand and still feel their body inside my body. And I said to Liam, like, oh, you know, they come out and then they turn. And I was like, oh my God, I can feel the baby turning, like baby's turning. I said, we just wait for this next contraction. Baby's going to come out. Next contraction, baby came out. I don't know how I went from being on my hands and knees to somehow sitting, like I caught you, didn't I? Caught the baby as they came out, sitting on my bum, and the placenta came out, like literally on his heels.
Wow.
Because that was something I'd already been thinking, okay, once the baby's out, I've got to say to Liam, birth's not over till the placenta's been born. We've got to stay, you know, dark and calm and quiet. And I didn't have to say any of that because it just came out. And then you were here. A boy. Yeah. And that was about 11:30. Yeah.
Wow. What a contrasting story to Olivia's birth.
I know.
How did you feel in that moment? Can you describe it?
Relieved and proud, and also just, it just felt so normal. It felt so normal and almost boring that I was kind of underwhelmed, like, which was amazing. Like, that was what I had wanted. I'd wanted it to just happen. Yeah, and it did. It just, there was nothing that I could have done or anyone else could have done to, you know, change any of it or make it feel different. Like, it just happened.
And how about Liam? What was his experience?
I think he was in shock because afterwards we came out to the living room and just sort of sat around, and I had some birthday cake, and I said, "Are you, like, how are you?" And he was like, "I feel sick." But he said at that point, and he said a few weeks later when I asked him, that he was really glad that that was how it had happened, and he felt really happy to have not been there while I was laboring, and to just kind of show up for the birth. And, you know, honestly, yes, I could have given birth without him there, but I was really grateful that he was there. And, you know, that was the most intense part physically for me. And yeah, I needed him for that bit. Yeah. I think he still has a bit of a mentality of like, oh, well, it's lucky that it went well, you know, but he can have that thought if he wants.
Yes, because we know, right, that luck plays but a small part in how birth unfolds. There is an element of luck. I do believe that, you know, and of being unlucky at times, but by far the bulk of our experience is based on the work, the unpacking, the leaning into trust, the being with the unknown and being patient, and all those things that determine our state of mind in birth, which is just so impactful on our physiology, on what hormones we're releasing, on how easeful or painful or long, or, you know, all those things. That plays a much bigger role than luck.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I really felt that my surrender and my trust and my decision to enjoy it made such a difference. Whereas that first time round, I was so afraid. I was afraid of the pain. I was afraid of what was to come. I was afraid of the unknown. Yeah, there was so much fear and uncertainty and a desperate need for control. Whereas this time, yeah, just let it go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was Olivia none the wiser until she woke in the morning?
Yeah, she slept through the whole thing. I mean, I don't think it was very loud. Liam actually said that he was surprised by how quiet I was. Again, I think I'd used my voice as a way to express fear the first time, and this time I didn't really need that. Yeah, so she slept through the whole thing and just got up in the morning and had a baby. Yeah, she'd seen the video of my friend's birth a few weeks before I'd showed it to her. And so I mean, I don't know how much they know, but she had a bit of an idea of, yeah, what what had happened, that he wasn't in my tummy anymore, and that he was a boy. Hey. Yeah. She'd slept, and that was what I'd hoped. I'd hoped that I'd go into labor in the evening and I'd give birth overnight, and she would sleep and we wouldn't have to worry about her, and that was what happened.
I haven't prepped you for this question at all, Chloe, and so hopefully I'm not throwing you too much by it, but I know that in this birth trauma healing work that we do, that a lot of people who have experienced a traumatic first birth and are planning their next birth hold on to some fear and grief around, if this birth is amazing and healing and beautiful and positive and empowering, how can I reconcile my first child's birth, and how will I feel about that this baby has had this start to life, and that's so polar opposite to the start that my first child had. Is there anything that you would say to that, or that has been your experience around that?
Yeah, definitely. I had a huge grieving period after he was born. So maybe, I don't really know, a few days, a week after he was born. And it was grief about Olivia's birth, kind of coupled with the grief I was feeling about not being able to mother her 100% and having to split. I mean, at that point I was in bed, so it wasn't even 50%. It was like, I'm barely even seeing you from one day to the next. And I think I'd said before this birth that I'm doing this for all of us, that we can all heal and learn from this, that Olivia's birth doesn't have to be her story. Like, she doesn't have to birth that way if she chooses to have children. She can see Ruben's birth, and she can maybe see the births of our friends or any other children that we might have, and know that that is an option. And I mean, absolutely, like, that grief that I feel for her, I don't think it will ever go away. But just even the parenting choices I made with her over the last few years, like choosing to bed share with her and choosing to breastfeed her until she decided she'd had enough. And yeah, I made a real effort to heal our relationship in any way that I could. I couldn't change her birth. I couldn't go back and make that different. So it's a choice moving forward, I suppose.
And it's an interesting reflection that I know is true for some people who I've talked about the same thing with in the past, is that it kind of means that all the trauma that was gone through with that first birth isn't in vain. Like, that was the springboard for the learning and growth that led you to this healing experience. And like you say, that being also a healing experience for your daughter as well. Yeah. Like, I wonder how different Ruben's birth might have been had Olivia's birth not been traumatic like it was, but been a pretty standard hospital or birthing centre birth, with the pretty standard interventions, and you might have felt good about the birth, but also not really understood why you didn't feel amazing like you did. Like, you've kind of gone on to learn through this kind of birth experience. I wonder what decisions you would have made around Ruben's birth had you not had that experience like you did with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a friend about that literally last week.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't like to say, oh, I had to have that terrible experience so I could have this, because it feels a bit yucky. But at the same time, yes, that experience was what led me down this path of birth trauma, women's circles, connecting with my cycle and the seasons and nature and, all this other stuff that ultimately, it got me here, birthing at home on my own. And I think you're absolutely probably right. If we'd just gone to the birth center and given birth there and it had been kind of fine, would I have sought to change that? I don't know.
If you get pregnant again, I wonder what Liam's view would be on having another, wild pregnancy and free birth.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, there's no way I could go. I don't think I could do it differently unless I knew something that I don't know now. If I knew something about my baby. Because I had people throwing all sorts at me. Oh, but what if it's twins? Well, I'll just birth them at home. Or what if they're breech? I'll just birth them at home. I couldn't imagine being in a scenario where I would choose a different path next time. But that's not to say that I wouldn't, because
I don't mean so much about your choosing. I mean more about his feelings.
Okay.
Around it, whether his fears and doubts or concerns have been a bit. He's been able to, whether he'd be able to drop those more next time, having been through this experience as you did, and him being there by himself, without Abby there and or midwife.
Or whether he just thinks that was lucky and it's not worth trying that again. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Can you share with us about your postpartum journey? Because I know that this has been quite remarkably different to what most people's postpartum journeys are like. And it wasn't happenstance. It wasn't, luck. This was absolutely to do with planning and intention and reaching out and perhaps diving into some more uncomfortable stuff. I'm not sure. I haven't heard this from you yet. I just no snippets. So whatever you'd like to share about your postpartum preparation and what that looked like for you guys, I welcome it.
So as part of my deep diving into birth physiology and natural undisturbed birth, I found a lot of doulas online and I started learning about postpartum. And I think before that, I thought that postpartum was just the time after birth. It was just that period of time where you've given birth and that was it. I didn't know that it was a special time, that it required anything different from normal life. And then as I started learning, I got a bit obsessed actually, and everything was interwoven, that women need to rest when they're bleeding during their menstrual cycle. Women need to rest when they're bleeding in postpartum. Women need space when they're bleeding in their menstrual cycle, but they also need to be supported by sisterhood. It's the same in postpartum. It's almost like every month that we bleed, we get to practice what we need to do in postpartum. Oh, we need to stay warm and not overdo it and eat foods that are nourishing and easy to digest. And yeah, I realized that this postpartum time was so sacred, and that for most people it was just being ignored. It was just like, oh, how quick can you get back to normal life? Well, you can't get back to anything when you're a totally different person. You can only get forward. You can go through it. And my postpartum experience with Olivia was horrific. I mean, I was deeply in this trauma state, but I had no support. Liam would leave in the morning, come back in the evening. I was trying to do everything: the washing, the cooking, the cleaning, baking bread, going for walks, even though I had this episiotomy that was healing, and also trying to bond with a baby that I felt kind of funny about, who I loved dearly, but also who kept reminding me of this awful experience. And it was not a good time, the first time round. And I really didn't want to have to go through that again. And I knew that some people hired postpartum doulas, but I knew that wasn't an option where we live. And so I just began thinking, how can I get myself the support that I need in this time? All my close friends have got babies and young children. They can't give it to me. My family's overseas. They can't give it to me. My partner can't give it to me because he's going to have to parent our daughter. His parents can't. No one that I knew could provide that level of support that I needed. And it's kind of specialized. On the one level, you can just have someone helping you with jobs around the house and cooking some kind of food. And then the more you get into it, it's certain types of food, it's certain bodywork practices, it's certain herbs. And I had learned a lot about this. And so I thought, well, I've got the knowledge. I just need people. And so I just asked. I put it out on my social media. I posted in some Facebook groups. So the NZ woofers, like what's it, willing workers on organic farms, basically overseas travelers. And I posted in there and a few other places. And I thought, if you don't ask, no one knows that you need it, And I wouldn't have done that. A few years ago, I would not have asked for help. I would have been mortified. I would have felt like, why do I deserve this? No one else gets this. I've just got to suffer. And again, that's something that had come up over the last few years, was learning to ask for support and help from my friends, from my partner, from my family when I needed it. And so it felt really comfortable to put it out to the world. I didn't really expect anyone to take us up on it. I had so much interest.
Wow.
I was blown away by how many people really wanted to come and support us. And this was unpaid. This was just like, come and support me in exchange for accommodation and food. We might cover some of your fuel costs if you want. But it's not like an hourly paid job.
Mm.
And yeah, I had New Zealanders, I had people who were traveling. I had one woman who lived in LA and was like, oh, I'm actually still in LA, but I was thinking of coming over so I could come to do it. What are you talking about? Yeah, it seemed to really reach a lot of people. And
What were you asking? What were you asking for?
I was asking for support for me. So could you come into our home and look after me, make me food? If you like cooking, you can cook from scratch. Otherwise, there'll be a freezer full of meals that are ready to go. Change my sheets, maybe watch Ruben while I'm having a shower, make herbal teas, set up a yoni steam. Like, all the instructions will be there. I said, it's a couple of hours a day, but it could be more if you wanted more. Yeah, and I wouldn't expect you to be doing much else in the house or like with our daughter. It was just kind of come and look after me. Yeah, and I had planned to have one person come for the month. And as I sat with it and realized how many people were offering and how intense it might end up being, I decided that having 2 people coming for 2 weeks each might be better. And then I added into that, but they might want weekends off. So maybe I'll have some other people who are local coming to do weekends. And that way, no one's going to get burnt out and more people get to experience this, this time. So yeah, we went into it with 2 women to do 2 weeks each, and each of the weekends being covered by someone else. And because he was here a bit sooner than we anticipated, we ended up just having the first week at home ourselves without any support. And that was great because Liam wasn't really working. We had all this food in the freezer. He looked after Olivia and and me. I was in bed. And then the first woman arrived and she did 2 weeks. And then the second woman who came ended up doing 3 weeks. So it was 6 weeks by the time the last woman left. And it was amazing. I don't think I can go back. I don't know how I would navigate that time without that level of support, especially because I did tear during birth, and I decided to let that heal naturally without any stitches. And so I was on a very strict bed rest. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that without those people, those women who came into our home, and they were like family, every one of them. It was really sad when they all left. And they ended up, all of them went so above and beyond what we asked for. They all were incredible with Olivia. They did more around the house. They all cooked food. So we ended up with the freezer, like, it had more meals in it by the time they left than we'd started with. And it was so incredible to then come back into the world feeling replenished and rested, rather than coming back into the world like 2 days after giving birth going, oh my God, like I can't cope, and just having to get on with it. It was amazing. And I think, because I know it will interest people, I think in the end, when we covered people's fuel costs and gave a few people some donations, I think we spent about $1,500 for 5 weeks worth of support. Like, everyone who came said it wasn't about the money, it was about the experience and about being able to support us in that time. And one woman who came for 2 weeks, she actually left her job and is doing a doula training at the moment, which just, like, I get goosebumps. It was so amazing to be able to give that to other people. And I didn't realize, I thought it was just going to be us who benefited, but all the women who came took so much from it. yeah, which was really cool. And it showed me that you don't have to have heaps of money to be supported.
Mm.
You don't you don't even have to have that postpartum knowledge. I mean, I had put together a whole load of resources so that everyone coming in knew what to do, but I'm sure it would have been just as beneficial to just have someone there cooking anything,
Mm.
and hanging out the washing.
Mm.
Yeah, it just, I don't know if it was the birth or the postpartum or both that made it such a game changer, and
Mm.
yeah, why I feel so good.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, all of those?
Yeah, yeah, all of them. I remember being exhausted when Olivia was born, and I have not felt that,
Mm.
and I remember being hungry and having to just like grab a bit of toast in between her crying, and I haven't been hungry because food just kept appearing for 6 weeks. Like I didn't. Yeah.
Did you experience like that sort of what we call the third day blues? Like, did you have that sort of downtime? That, yeah.
Yeah, I think I did. And I think that roughly coincided with when I found out that I had torn. So I didn't know straight away that there was a tear, and I had a bit of a panicky doubt, like, how bad is it? Can my body heal from this? This means I've got to be in bed more. I can't see Olivia and I can't parent her and I really miss her.
Mm.
And I got mastitis like 7 times in the first 6 weeks. Not, it wasn't severe, but it was, I mean, it's not pleasant. So
Mm.
there were these moments where I'd be lying in bed thinking, I know this is for the best, but I feel really shitty. Like
Yeah.
lying, and it's lonely. Yeah, like I was lonely
Mm.
and I was bored.
Mm.
And yeah, it definitely wasn't all sunshine and roses, but
Yeah.
um I knew it was what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it, like, there was a point where Liam was like, Olivia needs you, and that really hurt me because I knew she needed me and I couldn't be there for her. And I was like, I have to put my body first. And I said that to him. I said, I've got this body for the rest of my life, and how I spend these few weeks is fundamental for how I get to live the rest of my life. I said, I don't want to be incontinent when I'm 50. I don't want to not be able to have sex with you again. I don't want to just feel like I didn't give my body the chance that it needed to heal and recover.
Mm.
Yeah, so there were definitely some tense times.
Mm.
But I think those tense times would have happened if I was upright. They probably would have been worse because I'd have been tired and in pain. And yeah, yeah.
Do you mind sharing how you discovered that you'd torn and how that healing process has gone for you?
Yeah. How did I discover it? I think I just couldn't believe that I hadn't torn. So I really didn't think that I had, but I couldn't believe that that was true. And so I just kept looking. And I guess after a few days when the swelling had gone down, I could really see what my vulva looked like. And yeah, I was like, oh, there is a tear. But I hadn't had any pain. I hadn't had any pain when I was weeing. I hadn't had any pain or difficulty weeing or pooing, which I guess was why I thought, oh, maybe I haven't torn. But because I knew I had this quite solid scar tissue from the episiotomy, the other half of my brain was like, but surely you did tear. Like, surely you did. Um, yeah, so I think it was about day three or four that I realized that I had. And I mean, I didn't hugely change my healing plan, because my plan had been for I think I'd said I wanted to do 2 weeks in bed, 2 weeks in bed, a week kind of around bed, and then a week at home still not doing chores. And that just shifted to 4 weeks in bed, which I can't believe I did, actually, in hindsight. And for the first 2 weeks, I had my legs tied together with a scarf at the knees, so that, you know, in my sleep, I wouldn't accidentally spread my legs wide open. Lying down as much as possible, not sitting. And from about day 5 or 6, I started yoni steaming every day. And I would do a sitz bath every day. So it was like sitz bath in the morning, yoni steam in the afternoon, manuka honey on the tear, and rest. Lying down, resting for about four weeks. And I think in the 5th week, I would come out to the living room and lie on the sofa a little bit. And then, in the last week that we had in-house support, I think I went outside for the first time and like sat in a chair outside, and was doing a little bit more walking around the house. Once I knew that the tissues had healed back together. And I had about a week where the tissues had healed back together, but it was still really painful and tight and uncomfortable. But after about a week of just sitting a little bit here and there, you know, walking around the house, that loosened up. So it was probably maybe 8 weeks until I went for a walk that like left the house. But for about 4 weeks for the tear to heal. And I had this, you know, I did have this doubt, what if my body can't heal? And then I thought, well, it's too late for it to be stitched now anyway, you know, because I think there's like a 24-hour window for stitches. And so I thought, if it doesn't heal, I'm going to have to do something about it further down the line anyway. So I may as well just give it a go. And if it does heal, then I won't have to do something. You know, it was, I felt really pragmatic this time round in all my decision making. It was like, okay, well, this is what we know. We just do what we can.
Is there anything that if you could do your pregnancy and birth and postpartum over again that you would do differently, do you think?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I think I would have approached Liam's concern a bit differently from the start. I think I went in and I was like, this is what I want and I'm not changing my mind and you need to agree with it. That was kind of how I first presented it. And I wish I'd been a bit more open to hearing his experience and hearing his concerns from the start. And then maybe we wouldn't have had to have so many conversations about it. But other than that, I don't think so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Something else you did, Chloe, was you kept from people the fact that you'd given birth for a time. Yeah? How did you let it be known that, Ruben was here, and at what stage in the piece was that? And
Yeah, that was, I deleted my social media a few weeks before he was born because I needed to get rid of the noise.
yeah.
And after he was born, I shared it with family and friends, privately, but it still just felt too precious, too sacred and personal to put out to the world. And I've got, a lovely little community, but as was proven by this reel that went viral, like, it's not just your community who can see things, anyone can see things. And there were a lot of people out there who had said some really, really nasty things when I was pregnant. And I just thought, I don't even want you, people wishing like that bad things would happen to us so that we would, learn that we were being stupid or whatever. And I just thought, I don't want you to know this. Like, I want this to be our little thing. And in the end, I knew that there would be some people who weren't close enough to message privately, but who would want to know, who would be interested to hear about it or concerned about us. And so I just put a little story up saying, yeah, baby's here and I'm not coming back to social media yet, but I just wanted to let you know that, he's here and we're all safe and well. And I have such a battle with social media because I find it so consuming. And at the same time, so many of my close sisterhood are women I've met through social media.
Yes.
And so it's this, double-edged sword.
Yes.
I don't want to go back there yet. I know I'm not ready. And I know that my family need me to be here in the real world. And at the same time, I know I will go back because it's how I form a lot of connections. And I think that the world needs to know that there's other ways of doing pregnancy and birth and postpartum. Like, that feels like something I need to share.
Yeah.
I just have got to do it, in my own time.
Couple of super practical questions for listeners who might themselves be thinking of birthing without a midwife or doula present, or how did you manage the cutting of his cord if you did that, and registering him?
Yes, two very important questions. I had planned to do a full lotus birth with Ruben, so I had wanted to keep the placenta attached to him with the cord until it dropped off naturally. And so he was born, just like before midnight. We went to bed in the early hours of the morning. We got through kind of the morning of that next day, and then I just said, I can't do this. I can't do it. So we'd had the placenta in a bowl. I know a lot of people who do a full lotus birth after a lot of the blood has come out, they will put it in a bag to make it more portable and less bulky. But I wanted to have it in a bowl. And I don't have much experience with cords, but his cord seemed on the shorter side. And so it just was quite awkward feeding him and moving around while he was still attached to this placenta. And, once it the cord was cold, like it would make him jump when it touched him, which I had heard other women say that. So we made the decision. It was about 12 hours after he was born to cut the cord, but we actually burnt it because we didn't have anything. I mean, we could have found something, but I didn't have anything to tie with, or we'd have had to sterilize to cut. Whereas with the burning of the cord, because it sears the cord, you don't have to tie or clip. So we just burnt the cord about 12 hours after he was born. And I mean, it was very unglamorous. You can get really beautiful cord burning boxes, but we just used an oven dish with some tin foil in it to catch the wax. Like, it was very practical rather than aesthetic. And then the placenta, I had bought some herbs for lotus birth, and I had a lot of salt bought for the placenta. And so we salted and herbed the placenta, and it's actually still in the bowl in our bedroom. So we are going to put that under a tree at some point, but we've not quite managed it yet. But it's I mean, it's fine. It's absolutely fine in this bowl, which was really cool because, you know, again, I never got to see Olivia's placenta when she was born. It just got taken away from me, put in a bag, put in the freezer. So to just have had it in the room with us this whole time, even though it wasn't attached to him, was really amazing. And it was kind of funny that I'd had this plan for a lotus birth, and then, you know, it's actually not, you know, it's not for us. We'll just go with it. So that's the placenta. And the registering of birth. I do know of other mamas who have gone to see a doctor or a midwife or someone just once in their pregnancy to confirm the pregnancy, because it makes registering much easier. But I was like, no, I'm not going to play that game. I'm just going to, you know, give birth and then we'll cross that bridge. So there's an amazing Facebook group, a free birth Aotearoa Facebook group, where people share about this kind of thing. But I just Googled registering a birth New Zealand, took me to a website, filled out a form, and then they emailed me saying, we haven't received a notification of birth from your midwife. Can you please encourage them to do that? And I replied, I didn't have a midwife. What do I need to do? And so they emailed me the forms that I need to fill out. And they very clearly said, you know, we need 4 people to fill out this form, including this, this, and this, and then 1 person to fill out this form and 1 person to fill out this form. And it's a bit of a faff. But they laid it out really easily. So were
any of those people who needed to fill in bits people who, like, a doctor, a midwife?
So ideally, there were some funny things where it said, like, the birthing mother, the homeowner, and then other, you know, like other adults present at the birth. Oh, well, we didn't have any other adults present at the birth. There was one, doctor or midwife or nurse. We did actually get the Plunkett nurse to come and weigh him about 3 days after he was born, and she did end up filling out a form for us, but she wouldn't have had to. We could have just got anyone, someone who knew that you gave birth, basically. It doesn't have to be a medical person, which is good.
What was the free birth Facebook group called, Chloe?
I think it's just called Free Birth Aotearoa.
Okay, I'll look it up and I'll put the link in.
Because a lot of free birth resources are US or UK based, and when it comes to registering the birth or anything that's country specific, like that's, yeah. You really need to know.
Yeah. You said earlier, when you were talking about postpartum, about this idea of returning back to normal, and which is ridiculous because you're a totally different person. If you could summarize some key differences between the Chloe that you are now versus the pre-motherhood Chloe, are there any striking shares that come to mind?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you say pre-motherhood rather than pre this birth, because I really felt like I had done the work before this birth, that actually the outcome of this birth was kind of irrelevant because I'd done the work. I'd got myself to this place of trust and surrender and feeling empowered. But definitely comparing that to pre-motherhood, I mean, a world away. I had no self-trust really before becoming a mother, no, or very little self-belief. I had been conditioned to believe that authority figures were authorities for a reason, and that, you know, their word was gospel. And yeah, I think I'm much more questioning now, and also more open-minded. You know, if people don't, I would have looked at who I am now 3 or 4 years ago and thought that I was probably crazy. You know, oh, she's one of those wacky women who doesn't trust the system. And it's made me much more understanding of other people who don't necessarily fit into a box, because yeah, I've chosen not to do that. So if they've chosen it, there must be a reason. Anyone who's going against the overculture is doing it for a reason, because it's not easy. The easy thing to do is to just follow everyone else and do what you're told. So if you're doing something different, there's a reason for it. But yeah, mostly just trusting myself, trusting my body. That's, and loving myself and my body. That's been huge. Yeah, really huge. I mean, there's lots of other little things. I used to drink a lot, now I don't drink at all. You know, all these funny other extra things, but
a shift in priorities, eh?
yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that I can be this powerful version of myself in any clothes, in any situation, without having to be wearing a face full of makeup and have a few drinks to take the edge off, or standing in truth, I think. It's been a ride. A wild ride. Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been really awesome. So awesome to hear your story, Chloe, and to, you know, I've had the privilege of kind of being a part of your world through having you done the training with me, and just, you know, inviting me into your life through messaging and coming on the podcast and those sorts of things. So it's been such a thrill, a buzz to witness your growth and your courage and your healing, and just to see you blossom in so many ways. And thank you for sharing your story, because there are a lot of naysayers out there, and it is, whilst it doesn't necessarily affect how, your view of yourself or your decisions and that sort of thing, it's still just negativity that we don't really want in our lives. So thank you for sharing, because we need more of these beautiful, empowering, loving, healing stories to be shared in the world. So it's a beautiful gift. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on again. Yeah, and hopefully it just inspires other people to follow what feels right. I think that's so key. There isn't one, birth path for every woman, but it's making sure that you are making the decisions because they feel right for you. Yeah. Huh. Thank you.
Beautiful.